Coming up on Network Africa, Kizza Besigye leaves a court in the Ugandan capital after being granted bail. We have the latest from Kampala. Then, as the ceasefire in South Sudan comes into place, the condemnations and warnings pouring from the United States and the United Nations. And later, fishermen in West Africa call for a crackdown on illegal fishing to protect their livelihoods. Network Africa starts right now. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I am Adeshewa Josh. Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye has been released on 100 million Ugandan shillings non-cash bond pending the hearing of his treason case. Besigye was arrested in May in downtown Kampala and flown to Poro, where he had been in custody. He was charged with treason, a capital offense in the country, after holding protests against President Yoweri Museveni's re-election and swearing himself in as president. Mr. Besigye was granted bail after the judge considered all factors, including his advanced age, previous court sessions, and the sureties. But he ordered the opposition leader to refrain from acts of violence and maintain peace until his case is determined. He will be required to report to the registrar of the court once every 2 weeks, starting July the 26th. And joining us from the Ugandan capital, Kampala, is renowned journalist Joshua Poro. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa. We do know that Mr. Besigye has been granted bail. What more do we know about this case? Joshua, thank you for joining us. I believe that you can hear me. I said we do know that Mr. Besigye has been granted bail. What more do we know about this case?
Well, of course, he is being tried for treason in the High Court, and treason is a capital offense, a very serious one in this country. Last year, the president actually proposed that those who are undergoing capital offense trials should not be granted bail, but that was not passed by the courts of law. However, Besigye was granted bail today on a non-cash bond of actually 100 million shillings, and all his 5 sureties were given for the same. His 5 sureties include high-ranking members of the opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, which is his primary party. As a citizen of this country, he is entitled to bail, but bail does not come easy. And one of the reasons that was given by state prosecution for not granting Dr. Besigye bail is that he does or has not provided evidence that he is of advanced age, which is 60 years old. But the court did rule that even they, the prosecution, have not provided evidence that Dr. Besigye is less than 60 years old. So, I mean, he has been granted bail as a citizen of this country. He has so many court cases that are up and running, and I assure you Dr. Besigye attends all his court cases without fear or favor. So, I mean, they cannot say he's a flight risk or he will not attend, because he attends every case. So the judge just said he's compelled to give him bail because he meets all the preset conditions.
What kind of reactions have there been to his release since he was released?
Well, of course, you know, the man has his supporters as a politician. So, I mean, people were jubilant. My family members who are, of course, not staying so far from Dr. Besigye were telling me how there is excitement in the entire place. I mean, everybody is happy to receive him back home. They have shown him support. There was a procession from town until his home, which is about 19 kilometers away from the heart of Kampala city. So people are jubilant. And, of course, the party members do feel that justice has been served. So let's wait and see what happens, and the end, what will be the outcome of the court ruling on his treason case, which we do expect to take a very long time.
Yeah, well, according to what the court order says, that Mr. Besigye must refrain from acts of violence and maintain peace until his case is determined. What are the chances that we could see renewed clashes inspired by this release?
I don't know what we mean by renewed clashes, but there have never been any clashes between Dr. Besigye's supporters. There have only been clashes between Dr. Besigye's supporters and the police, who come up occasionally to try and compel them to stop the processions and the strikes. But you see, as long as Dr. Besigye is moving from his home to town or from his home to office, and he gets atop of the roof of his car to wave to his supporters, then yes, we shall always see that, because his supporters will always follow him, and the police will eventually come up to always try and stop the procession. Sometimes I believe it is the fault of the police. If actually the police could just look at these people, give them an opportunity and provide them the protection and let them move on, there'll be no problem. The chaos begins every time the police come. So with Dr. Besigye, it's going to be difficult for us to tell that there is not going to be a clash between his supporters and the police, because he's a very defiant man, and he promised to not give up the defiance campaign, which he's currently pulling off, one of the things that led to his arrest. So I will not be surprised if there is a clash between his supporters and the police.
Thank you so much, Joshua Poro from Kampala, Ugandan capital. Thank you. Just yesterday, South African President Jacob Zuma met with Francois Hollande in Paris to discuss Great Britain's vote to leave the European Union, among several other global issues. South Africa is likely to avoid a recession in 2016, but a possible rise in global risk aversion linked to Britain's decision to leave the European Union could impede its economic recovery. In a report on the risk to sub-Saharan Africa, Moody's said South Africa was the most exposed in the region to market volatility and a potential shift in investors' risk perceptions because of Brexit.
J'ai été parfaitement clair. Il n'y aura aucune conséquence.
I was perfectly clear. The Brexit will have no impact on the relations between the European Union and South Africa. On the contrary, we are going to strengthen our commercial relations in order for South Africa to be a key partner for Europe, including within regional organizations such as the South African Development Company.
We agreed that the so-called Brexit holds implications way beyond the borders of the UK and the member states of the EU. We further reinforced our joint commitment to strengthening cooperation on regional and global peace and security, as well as global governance issues.
More about Brexit later on in the program, but let's stay with South Africa. The country is set to host the World AIDS Conference, which begins on Monday, July the 18th. The event, often referred to as the World Cup of HIV/AIDS, is themed Access, Equity, Rights Now, and is expected to draw over 15,000 participants from 180 countries worldwide. The Director of Communication, Tyrion Sales, says the flag-off is coinciding with Mandela Day and will provide a platform to assess what has been achieved so far, as well as the challenges that still remain.
We are very happy that South Africa has chosen as co-host with the International AIDS Society to launch this conference, or to open this conference on Nelson Mandela Day. It will also be a reminder to us to do all we can as individuals and organizations to reach out to others so that we can further set back this epidemic and work actively. Is the FIFA World Cup of HIV/AIDS and TB. And so when we see that 18,000 delegates will be here, including around 1,000 of your own colleagues from all over the world, this really is a seminal occasion for the world to reflect on what has been achieved in this epidemic so far, to identify and acknowledge the challenges that still exist, and then to also look at some of the solutions that are already on the table and others that may be further down the pipeline. I think it's also important to emphasize that we are going to see the sharing and revelation of unprecedented research outcomes at this conference. A lot of the scientific work and insights have been reserved for sharing on this platform.